You're listening to the School of Connection podcast, episode 14.
Welcome to the School of Connection podcast with Rana Ulk. Each week, she'll connect you with the stories and wisdom of people doing extraordinary work that's changing the world. If you're hungry for growth and love inspiration, you're in the right place. Each episode will give you practical insights and ideas that you can take action on starting today. And now, your host, founder and chief connectologist, Rana Ulk.
Hello, everyone. I have a special guest today to have a conversation with us about a very serious topic that's near and dear to me. We're going to be speaking about girls and women and body image, particularly about teens. I've worked in many different industries over the last 20 plus years, but one of the best things I've ever done was help women who suffered with food and body image issues. I don't know if any of you out there knew this. I knew just about everything you could know about these things because of my own history with disordered eating and poor self-image. It started when I was a very young girl, and it really wreaked havoc in my life until I was finally able to get well. Not until my late 30s. So, food and body image issues are often misunderstood, and suffice to say, the causes are complicated. We can't get into all of them right now. It's very tempting, but you just really can't point to one cause. It's usually a perfect storm of causes. What we do know for sure is that these issues, body image issues, have drastically increased, and that our young girls are suffering more than ever from poor body image and accompanying feelings of low self-worth and anxiety, all because of how they look. We're going to talk about some of the major contributing factors to these rising statistics, and hopefully we're also going to convince you that there are things we can all do to spread awareness and create necessary changes. That is what Angela Barnett is determined to do. She's behind a great cause, and she's definitely out there doing everything she can. I've known her for a couple of years. We're going to find out how she's doing it. We're going to share it with you. Here she is. Angela, thank you so very much for being here. I really appreciate it. You know I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's so nice to connect again.
Yes, and for our audience, in case they can't tell, you are here. You're joining me, actually, from New Zealand. So you're doing this down under.
I know, at the bottom of the world. Although it feels like the top for us, but it is really down the bottom.
Yeah. So tell us, Angela, is it your organization, your business? What do you call it?
It's my passion at the moment. I'd love it to be a business. It's something that I do in and around lots of other things, so whenever I can.
And what's it called?
It's called Pretty Smart, and it has really taken off in the last year, and it has been building steadily and steadily. I wondered if you wanted me to just tell you how it started, which might kind of in the same way explain what it is. Are you up for that?
I'd love for you to tell me how it started. Yes, tell all of us.
It was actually in the States where it started, just to take ourselves out of New Zealand for a bit. So what it's morphed into is it's a talk for girls. I go into schools. I usually try and get, we call them intermediate, but it's the middle school, get all the girls together in a hall, and it's a 1 hour talk, and then they get a little couple of pages to work through afterwards. But the main idea is to equip them with, this sounds so PC when I say this, but it is really equip them with media literacy and to be able to see through images that will go after their self-esteem. And then I've got a section now on social media. And then the last part of it is kindness and how important it is to be kind inside your own head and also to other people about how you look. So it's sort of those three areas. Images come at you from the outside world, that in your personal feeds, and then the dialogue that you have inside your own head is sort of the three factors. I try and teach them to hopefully help them go down a path of having body acceptance. That's my goal.
So you mentioned something. This is important. You said media literacy. So for our audience that is maybe hearing about this for the first time and maybe waking up to what these images are doing, could you explain what media literacy is?
Yes, good question. So I've worked in marketing and advertising for years. So I feel like I see it now everywhere, but it's being aware of, I don't want to say the word tricks, but it's being aware of the different techniques that brands and all aspects of media will use to get your attention, to get a message across to you, to convince you to do something, particularly in the beauty industry. Sort of women, it's a very powerful industry. Women spend more on beauty than education. And so it's a large industry that talks to us, it's been talking to us for decades about how we should look. So that's what I mean by media literacy, in particular to the beauty industry and fashion industry, as being feeling like you understand and you feel educated about what it is, the messages coming through, and also how it works in a way.
So I know maybe you don't want to use this word, but I will. Are you talking about the ways in which they are manipulating, perhaps, our desire to purchase whatever it is they're selling?
Yes, manipulating is one way. I mean, I know from having worked on the other side of it, is that there's a lot of noise and a lot of messages out there. And so there's some things that work to get attention. And for instance, like a known one is using celebrities, another known one is using very attractive people because they turn heads. So those are old tricks that work because it's a busy world and everyone's trying to get everyone's attention. But where the manipulation has come from since the 80s really has been manipulating images, retouching images, or also they're just creating and often showing the same images all the time, so very similar body shapes and sizes and skin colour. It ends up becoming a mild form of manipulation, because if you don't see yourself represented in the images that you're looking at, then a lot of people will start to question themselves rather than question the images. So that's an outtake I have from the talk, because it's great if all the girls can start to question and look around at the images. They're walking to the mall to go to the movies and they look at the images at the pharmacy and they go past. It's way better if they can look at it and go, there's that thing again. There's no diversity. They've used the blonde person again. Sort of look at it and question that rather than question themselves.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, there might be, I'm not saying might be because I really mean it, actually. I know for a fact that there are people out there who would say, so what? So what if we're seeing these images? We know they aren't real now. We know that they're being photoshopped. My child knows when she's looking at the cover of the magazine in the checkout line that image of whoever her latest superstar idol is photoshopped and not really how she looks. What would you say to that?
Well, I have exactly the same experience. Like, my daughter knows that, and a lot of the girls, when I say to them, hey, who in the room knows Photoshop, knows what Photoshop is, they all put their hands up. They all know about it. If I say, who knows what having a positive body image is, they all go, yes, we know about having a positive body image, and don't hate yourself and roll their eyes. You can know that as a concept, but then if you are still consistently surrounded by those images, and it's not just magazines, they're all watching YouTube, it can be cartoon characters on games. If you're still getting an overwhelming sense from so many messages that come in that there is a particular body shape, for instance, that is preferable, those are the messages that are still sinking in with young girls. And I wish that they weren't, but there's girls, young as 5 and 6, questioning that they're fat. And there's girls not raising their hands in class because of fear of drawing attention to their appearance. So even if they might know that manipulation is going on, there's still overall an abundance of messages coming in that's not saying everyone is different and unique and that's fabulous and you're just great the way you are. So unfortunately, that's why these talks are still needed. I'd love to be made redundant, actually. That's a small goal of mine, is that these talks won't be needed in the future.
Yeah, and on the subconscious level, things are still getting through, right? We logically know something, but that doesn't mean that emotionally it's not impacting us somehow, somewhere, and we're usually unaware of it. And these children, and they are children, I mean, we're calling them young girls or teenagers, are essentially being brainwashed and not even knowing it. That's what they know, and that's what's getting in. And so it is a brainwashing of sort. Those are the circuits that are being laid down, the pathways that are being laid down in their brains is what is quote unquote normal, what they're supposed to look like. And in their growing brains, that's making a tremendous, long lasting, in some cases, impact.
It is. Yeah. It is. And it's because it starts from such an early age. Is one thing I show them, which is an old Dove video, but it's the best example I've got of a girl who comes in and she looks like a normal looking girl. She doesn't look like a model, and she comes in and goes through, you would have seen it, everyone's seen it, it's sort of, and goes through styling, makeup, hair, and then Photoshop, and the eyes are made bigger, the neck's extended. When I show them that, I then also show them Disney images where a designer has put side by side princess faces that we get shown versus if their features were made to be what our real features look like. And the eyes are always made bigger.
Why are eyes always made bigger?
Because it adds to that, like if you think of puppies and dogs and things, it makes them sort of cute and lovable. And so, but when I show them that and go, look, you can see this in an ad, understand that often in marketing images, especially selling cosmetics, eyes are made bigger. And, it's just a trick. So look through it and understand when you're older and you want to make your eyes bigger with makeup that I'm not saying don't do it at all. All I'm saying is just understand that we've received those messages. We've received them a lot, that this is preferable to have bigger eyes.
So we're talking a lot about what is happening and these images that girls are being exposed to and that they shouldn't be exposed to, and it's creating all these impressions and it's manipulating their minds. What are the consequences? What do you see or have you seen? And what are you hearing from the girls when you go and give these pretty smart talks?
I hear such a mix of stuff. I'll give you a sad one and then I'll give you a happy one. How about that?
Okay, great.
So one of the things I do towards the end of the talk is I don't talk about my past or my history at all, because they're between the ages of 10 and 12 and I'm in my 40s, and I feel like they're also not interested in me. I really,
yes.
I'm kind of irrelevant. I'm the message that's coming, it's just a message just needs to pass through me. But I do say to them when I've stressed the importance of, I say to them, do you know what I mean when I say thoughts that you say to yourself inside your own head? And they all nod, and they said, so do you know what I mean when I say wishing something was different, or looking in the mirror and questioning what you've got? And they all totally nod. So I get them to do, one of the outcomes is, I want you to find 3 things that you are okay about, that are all yours and unique, and they're part of you, and there's something for you to celebrate. And I will usually say to them, I didn't have these 3 things when I was young, and for a long period of time, I really hated my body. And so it might seem like a really small thing, but it is really important. And then I'll give them examples of going, you can find 3 things to love about yourself, and it could be your feet. I'm not saying it has to be the color of your eyes or what your hair is. It's just 3 things about your body, and think of it from the inside out that helps you. Is it your legs that help you play soccer, or is it your mouth that helps you sing, or what? Think of it in terms of how they work for you as a body in a unit. And then I had a girl come up to me after a talk earlier on this year, and she said, I can't do that homework. Okay. It's why can't you do the homework? And she said, there's nothing I like about myself. There's nothing. I can't think of anything. And so I said, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Do you play any sports, or do you do any art, or is there anything that you use your body for in a way? Or she said, no. And then she said, I like to eat. I said, well, you could have your tongue, like that's, with your taste buds. And then she looked at me like, that's not what you mean. And and rolled her eyes like, okay, come on, what else? Something else that helps celebrate you. And then she said, I like to play the keyboards. So then I got her to think about, well, how do you play the keyboards and what is it? She said, oh, well, I like, she looked at her hands and went, I could like my hands. I went, okay, that's one thing to put on your list. Your hands help you play music. And I said, what else? She said, well, and I guess I quite like to dance sometimes. I said, so anyway, and we just worked through that, trying to get her to think from the inside out about her body. But it was very sad for me to hear her, she was 11, I think, to say, there's nothing I like about myself. There's nothing I like about the way I look.
And about how old is this young girl?
She was about 11.
Wow.
So I get things like that. Yeah, just young girls that just hate everything about their appearance, which just really breaks my heart. But then on the flip side, I've had, and one thing I talk about is the power of photography. And I put up an image of one of my favourite photographers, Thomas Knights, who grew up as a redhead, and he really wanted to change the way, in particular, male redheads are viewed. And so he started this thing called Red Hot. Anyway, he photographs males and females. Mm-hmm. And so I put up an image of a female, and she has such a beautiful photo, and she has a face full of freckles and brilliant fiery hair. And say, look, this is the power of photography. You know, if we saw images like this all the time, there would be salons everywhere selling us how to get more freckles. You know, so this, if we don't see this, then we think it's rare and we can question it. But if we saw it all the time, it would flip, just to try and get them to see, you know, the power of repeat messages. And at the end of a talk, a girl came up to me and she had a face full of freckles and said, thank you so much. I've never, ever felt okay about my face. And I saw that photo and I feel good for the first time about my freckles.
Wow.
So every talk, there's a real contrast of different answers.
Well, I feel like, yeah, there are ads out there and computer-generated images and Photoshop, that's for sure. When we were kids in the 80s, we didn't have to deal with an internet. We didn't have to deal with YouTube, with computer-generated images. I mean, of course there was advertising, but it wasn't nearly the way it is right now with all the Photoshopping. I often think, though, about the impact of the frequency with which we see our own images now in photos. I mean, when we were kids, you took a picture and prayed that someday you'd get to see it and it was something that was fair and decent. I mean, heck, the photo albums are proof that photo editing wasn't a thing, right? When we were kids, there's tons of silly pictures and, oh, well, somebody came out with their eyes closed, you dealt with it. Now, these young girls are taking selfies, they're editing their own photos, they're seeing their own image constantly. What is the impact of that? Oh,
it's huge. It's absolutely huge. There's so many great people doing research into this right now because, and I agree with you that, yeah, we're lucky to get a couple of photos a year taken of us when we were growing up and then printed and ending up in an album. So something that I was on a panel recently talking to the cosmetics industry, and this is sort of something I said to the group, is we have gone from hounding brands and industries saying Photoshop is not okay, and a lot of them are starting to listen now, not all of them, we've still got a long way to go, but there's definitely a lot that are changing and listening. So we've gone from that to we can all do it ourselves, and we are all doing it, and especially the younger generation are doing it because they don't have any reason not to. I just bought a new phone recently and I just found a button. There was, in terms of taking photos, there's portrait and then there's one called beauty, which has filters on it. So we've gone to the equivalent of touching up ourselves all the time, and it really does have a big impact on, again, turning focus onto so much on appearance. And a study just came out of the UK looking at 2000 teens, and they looked across all the social media and which was having a more damaging effect on body image and self-esteem and confidence for girls. And Instagram came out the worst because of the focus there so much on, and the permanent focus, you know, stays on a feed of focus on appearance, who we are and what we're doing right now and how do we look. Wow. So one of the other stats that's scary is, do you know what Facetune is? Have you heard of Facetune? It's an app that quite easily manipulates, can change the shape of your face, it can change your body shape, and it's one of the most popular apps in something like 80% of countries. It's
unbelievable. You said it's called Facetune?
Yes, FACETUNE. I'll say to the girls, is who's heard of it? But most of them haven't, fortunately, at the age that I'm talking to, sort of middle school age. And I'll say, please don't start using it. And I'll show them some examples of what, the difference between face-tuned and not face-tuned. And I'll just talk them through why it's so bad to start doing it. It really starts such a sort of micro focus on judging yourself and then also presenting a false image to the world, not real. So that has an impact on all the people looking at you, but also it has a real impact on yourself, because it's not you accepting who you are, presenting a false image, and it's so horrifically easy to use.
Well, I imagine that it would be disappointing to see yourself in the mirror if you're constantly taking photos and quote unquote beautifying them or tuning them up.
Oh, exactly. And also disappointing for other people when they see you in person and see that you are doing that. It's actually so easy for people to see through it. Unlike airbrushing and marketing and advertising, it took quite a while for us humans to see through it. Whereas on a feed, someone who doesn't know you won't see through it, but anyone who knows you will see through it. And I give the girls an example of that happening to me recently, meeting someone, and then they told me to look at their Instagram feed. They actually said they were a body positivity activist, and so I went and had a look and realised when I looked at the feed, my heart sank. I was like, their face looks different, and then realised with all the selfies that they were using Facetune.
Anyway. Well, so you are going around to as many schools as would have you to talk to young girls about these issues and hopefully educate them so that
we can build strong, confident girls. I mean, we've been telling girls since we were young that they can do anything, and now girls can do anything. We have an amazing female Prime Minister right now who just breastfed her baby at the UN meeting. We actually, as opposed to when we were told you could do anything and you can, we actually can. There's quite a few other aspects that, a lot of feminists are talking about that still need to be changed as part of the whole Me Too movement. And then there's another whole aspect of it, which is less judgment on appearance, especially for women. Well, and for men too. It's actually a really growing problem for them as well. The feminists in the 60s fought this, and the beauty myth was written in 1989, I think, was just, we need to take the focus away from how we look because it's not helping us. Yet here we are again, still in this situation. So reducing that.
Like we're worse off when it comes to the focus on image.
It does feel like we're worse off when I'm around young girls, just because it's happening younger and younger. There was a period of innocence, I think, because you weren't seeing photos of yourself all the time and you weren't dialing yourself up into YouTube, and there was 3 TV channels, and so it does feel like girls are worse off now as far as exposure to the number of messages.
And this is also having an impact on boys. Of course, there are boys who have body image issues, but the impact of boys seeing continually photoshopped, perfected images of girls and women is something that isn't talked about enough, what that is doing to their expectations. Do you ever talk about that, or is that not appropriate for this audience? But I'm sure you're aware of it, right?
I am aware of it. I've been asked a lot by schools to prepare a talk for the boys. Mm-hmm. And although for the boys, actually, it would be similar talk to the girls, as far as it's really important that you see through these images of men as well, and the images that you're being shown of the ripped bodies that they see everywhere, especially online. So the talk would also go to help them preserve and protect a good body image, is you've got to see through this stuff as well, and don't fall into the trap of starting to do it on social media, even though it's nowhere near as large for boys. But then that would be another aspect of it as well. Don't expect women to look like what you see. And also, I mean, for them, it's in a world of digital dating, it's also a confusing world for them, because if women are manipulating the images and then they're meeting them in person, that's also disconnect, men and women meeting women, men meeting men. So just a bit more honesty would be great with who we are, and honesty and acceptance with who we are and what we look like, and being okay to be older, being okay to be all different body shapes and sizes, being okay to be all different shades and ethnicities and able-bodiedness, and yeah.
I do think it's important to say that you are going around and talking to teen girls. Hopefully you will be able to expand it to boys or however it is that you want to expand it. I hope these talks and demand for you increases and spreads like wildfire, Angela. Maybe you'll be training a team someday. But the truth is, money talks, and the beauty industry, the cosmetic procedure industry, the dieting industry are billion-dollar industries. How can we possibly fight that? It's almost like David and Goliath. One way to do it would be to say, I am not going to buy any of the products of any of the companies that are practicing these manipulative tactics or trying to brainwash our young girls. But that is really difficult to do, especially as one person, right? I mean, it's difficult to do even if we band together. How do we do this?
It's a great question. I know at one point when I started the talks, I thought, I don't know if I can change these large industries because they are so large. So how about I just try and help girls see through them, was sort of the idea for it. But I'm hopeful down here in the bottom of the world that change is possible in exactly the same way that companies now need to be so much more accountable about the packaging and the products, what goes into their products and services, and thinking about the planet and sustainable solutions. So in the same way, there's a sort of social justice happening, and there is a lot of people speaking up in this space, putting pressure on brands. I was just reading earlier today that CVS in the States, the incredibly large chain
yes.
that I used to go to when I lived in California, they have just decided this year that they will not have any retouched images for their cosmetics lines in store. And that's for the products that they make, and for the brands that they support, they've given them a deadline of 2020 to not have any retouched images. Otherwise, they'll put a sticker on the packaging saying the images advertising this are retouched. So
I had not heard that. That's fantastic. The only thing I had heard, CVS did take a stand with cigarettes. I don't know if you're aware of that. They do not sell cigarettes.
Oh.
And most, pharmacies here, the Walgreens, and actually maybe we shouldn't be talking about names. I don't know. But most, grocery stores and pharmacies, that's where you get cigarettes. And CVS, which, like you said, is huge here, said, nope. We're not going to sell them anymore. If you even want to go in and buy a lighter, you can't find one at CVS. So the fact that they're leading the way and taking a stand on this is incredibly encouraging. Nobody has followed them on the cigarette issue that I know of, though. So that's really encouraging. I love that. And I love that you said, I decided that I am going to do what I can, because I think if more of us continue to do that, and that's really this podcast is very much a forum where I want people like yourself, who are one person going out there being the change that they wish to see in the world. That's what I want. I want more of us to be inspired to do that. And all of this to say, now, Angela, this is not your day job, right? I mean, lest somebody out there listening think, oh yeah, but I have a job. Can you just briefly tell us what your real day job is?
I'm a freelance writer, and I'm also a freelance marketer, which is why I know this industry well. So I do, when I'm not doing, so I have one day a week where I work on Pretty Smart talks, and
one
then the other
week you get to work on Pretty Smart talks.
Either working on the talks, or it will be freelance writing, hopefully about the sort of subjects that I'm passionate about. And then the other 4 days I do writing and work for, it's a travel app. It's actually really big in the States, called Road Trippers. So, that pays the mortgage.
Well, I love it. And I could talk to you forever and ever. First of all, I want to say you're an awesome writer. If anybody out there is listening, even if you don't want to go into the Pretty Smart stuff, if you follow Angela and read her articles, you will laugh your butt off, even when she's writing about relatively serious things. I promise you. I love your writing. You've got a great sense of humor and very witty. So before I ask you my very last question, Angela, I do want to tell our audience, we've barely just touched the tip of the iceberg of these topics. Where can they find out more about you and about Pretty Smart?
I have it's a site's probably the easiest thing, or a Facebook page. The website is prettysmart.nz.
Okay, so that's prettysmart.nz, y'all. That's because it's
NZ. Yes.
Okay, and we will put all of these links in the show notes. We always do, but just in case. So you are also on Facebook as, is it Pretty Smart?
No, Pretty Smart wasn't available. So it's Pretty Smart Teens.
Okay. Is there anywhere else where you want people to be able to reach you? Perhaps there's people out there who would love to invite you to come and have a talk for their school.
Oh, I would love that. We keep plotting a trip to the States next year with my family. On the site, or if they go to the Facebook page, either place will lead to you can get in touch with me.
Great. Okay, so now my last question. What is something that anybody in our audience listening can do starting today to either increase awareness, help their children, improve their own body image, whatever it is you want to share in this realm? What would that be? One action item.
Oh, it's so hard to do one. But just one message that I give the girls at the end. I talk to them about, I put an image of my cat actually and say, look, it's judging someone on the appearance is about as ridiculous as teasing a cat for being a tabby, because the cat can't change the colour of its fur. The cat can't change its shape. The cat can't change the fact it's got a kink in the end of its tail and it's got green eyes. We can correct the cat when it scratches the couch, if it bites when it's a kitten. So it's one of my main messages is that we can change our words and our behaviour, and that's a constant lifelong process, is improving what we think and say and how we behave. But we can't ultimately change how we look. Just one thing is to be so conscious of that and go about your day thinking about having more kindness to others about how they look. If you see someone, I was just reading a post this morning of a man who self-identifies as a fat man. He sort of wrote this heartbreaking post about he just gets so much scorn in people's expressions on their faces when everywhere, strangers, so much scorn and judgment, and how hard and awful that is. So that would be one thing, is be aware of, sort of biases that we have about appearance, the thoughts in your own mind, because that comes through on expressions on your face and stuff that we say or stuff we can teach our kids.
It's true. And it does take conscientiousness. When I had a practice, an exercise where I had to write down every judgment I made, and I think it wasn't even midday before I was feeling pretty bad about all the judgments I had already made. We do it so automatically, I think, that it's only when you set out to pay attention to those automatic thoughts that you realize how much you're doing it. And children are listening and they're watching and they're learning. So I know I learned a lot of judgment from my family of origin. So, monkey see, monkey do, I guess. We really have to be careful. And what about parents then? Speaking of that, is there something that parents can do for their children? Do you have any resources for them in case they want to know more?
Yes, I do, actually. I will send you a link. So I have a cheat sheet of these 7 tips on the cheat sheet of how to be more media savvy with your child. Or for anyone who doesn't want to download anything, if they just want another tip, is go through your teenager's feed with them and help them identify if there's anyone that they follow who doesn't make them feel great about their own body. For instance, someone's always posting face-tuned images, then that's, one tip you can do with your child is say, is this person, how do you feel when you see images from this person? Do they make you feel good or do they make you feel bad? If they don't make you feel good, unfollow them. You don't need them.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. And there are people who might disagree with me, but I've always thought if I was a mother, I probably would not be subscribing to or buying a lot of those fashion magazines personally. I know that, there's probably somebody out there listening who's saying, well, I do and I don't mind and my child doesn't mind, but still those images do have a tremendous impact.
They do. Well, this is one thing I say in the cheat sheet is, I know, for instance, I always really enjoyed the articles in Vanity Fair. Yeah. Some really well-written articles.
Absolutely, there are.
And I subscribed when we were living in the States when my children were so young. They didn't eat, they were under the age of 1. So, but then I stopped. But if you do have magazines like that, then it's completely okay to sit down with your child and go through the magazines. And as you come across the ads, because we all know now about them, like you were saying right at the beginning, and look through them and either let your child do it. And if you find them going, oh, she's pretty or she's that, try and think about them as a person. Stop and go, what do you think your favorite movie is? What do you think her favorite sport is? And try and look through the imagery and or also just make comments about, just notice things and go, yeah, there's all the same body types in here. That's not very interesting. That's not what we see in the real world, is it? So it's really, if you want to have those magazines, then talk about what you notice in them.
That's a fantastic point because we can't, they're not completely shielded no matter what we do, right? So
they're so not. Their friends' places, other things that they see, and they're just what they can access online is frightening.
Angela, I know that you have another meeting to go to after this. You're a busy woman. I so appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. To our audience, I hope that you found this conversation insightful. I know that there are definitely things that we can all do to improve our own body image and self-image. We're always hard on ourselves, and we need to teach our young girls to have more confidence. They're really struggling out there. Just spread the word. Thank you very much for listening, Angela. Thank you so much.
I love the whole idea behind your podcast, and staying curious is such a wonderful mantra for life. And I agree. We can all just do small things.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the School of Connection podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and visit schoolofconnection.com/podcast for the show notes.